If you want to learn, you have to first listen.
Welcome to episode 21 of Matt O'Donnell Wants to Know, a podcast to feed our curious minds. I'm Matt O'Donnell, and I want to know who you are. I want to know what you do. I want to know why the video game company Konami hated children so much that they made all of the early 1990s Ninja Turtles video games so hard. Perhaps they were trying to teach children about heartbreak or something, or just frustration. I don't know what they were trying to teach us, but those games were so hard, and I don't know that I've ever truly finished a Konami Ninja Turtles video game. Gosh. Ugh. I want to know what matters to you and why. I should probably talk about that with my therapist. I've spent the past 15 years as a professional bass player. I've covered a lot of miles and talked with a lot of people. I've found that the person deeply interested in a topic is often more interesting than the topic itself, and the bigger picture is found in the details. What a fantastic excuse to share conversations with people who I think are great. This time on the podcast, I am joined by chef and entrepreneur Amanda O'Donnell. It also says here she is married to someone named Matt O'Donnell. Oh, that's me. That's me. Yes, Amanda is also stuck with me for the rest of her life. We will get to her in just a minute. Hey, listen, thanks everybody for being real cool about having to take off the last release cycle 2 weeks ago. It has been well documented throughout the archives of Matt O'Donnell Wants to Know, as well as anyone that will listen to me talk about it, how important it is that I maintain a consistent release schedule predictably on time. Human beings are creatures of habit, and I feel like I can only grow this thing the way I want to if I make sure that there is a new episode that shows up every other Tuesday. At many different points in my life, I would have felt like an utter failure for not putting out a new conversation 2 weeks ago, but I don't feel that way. Not to mention I put up that short little intermission audio thing as a placeholder so that something went up in the feed on the Tuesday when it was supposed to. Some would try and convince me that that is accomplishment and also a self-progress, and I would try to believe them. One of the people that would try and convince me of that is Amanda O'Donnell. She spends a whole lot of her time trying to convince me of accomplishment and progress, and as I said, I continue to do my best to try and believe it deep down within my cellular fiber. This episode marks Amanda's first appearance on the podcast. I think it was obvious that it wouldn't be long before it happened, and that there's a lot of good fodder for conversation, and so there is a chance of her showing up all over the place. Amanda and I met on Tinder in 2018. I came across her page and saw that she was a chef. She had gone to culinary school in Boston, which is also where I went to college, and she was also very pretty. Therefore, I utilized the super like button. Do they still have that on Tinder? I don't know. I haven't been there since then, really. Because I was hoping that a super like would be pretty evidential to her that I really wanted to speak with her, or speak via text inside of a dating app, whatever 21st century thing was going to happen so that we would meet. I wanted it to happen, and I wanted to give the most direct way forward. It was an interesting time in my life, still sort of reeling and reassessing and understanding what relationships were supposed to be like for me or what I wanted them to be like in the wake of the demise of my previous relationship. Luckily, she was just plain awesome, and that's been the story ever since. Amanda is a personal chef doing business under the moniker of Chef Amanda Lee. She does weekly meals for people as well as event stuff, and gosh, I could list a whole bunch of things, but pretty much anything that you can imagine someone being a do-gooder with food about, she does it. She is the most caring person for clients in a way that you just could not imagine that someone trying to make money with food could ever really be. And prior to being a chef, she had been to art school. She's a fantastic artist. As a matter of fact, I have her to thank for all of the cover images for this podcast for each episode. Not the logo that was done for me by a wonderful artist named Jackson Zorn, but all of the weekly things that go out are totally her handiwork. And if it wasn't for her being able to spit those out, I would probably be more behind than I ever am. That last break where I had to take one off would not have been the first time that there would have been a break. My dedication to consistency is held up by Amanda pushing that rock up the hill with me. But all that to say, in terms of being great at art, it means that she makes food that tastes fantastic. She knows how to make it look great, and all of it is prepared and given to people with a ton of love and care. And so that is sort of the great triple threat of what makes her incredible at what she does. This is an oddly linear and really straightforward discussion that we have, but at the end, it makes me realize that we will have gotten through all the exposition, and anytime she appears in Matt O'Donnell Wants to Know media anywhere else, it can be a much more free and loose, ridiculous chat. I'm exceptionally proud and lucky to have her in my life all the time, and I am super lucky that she is my guest here on this episode of the podcast. So let's go to that chat right now with Amanda O'Donnell.
Is this the first time you've recorded in your pajamas?
Yeah, this is by far the most casual setting.
Just two people in their pajamas
recording a podcast interview.
I also don't know that I've ever sat this far from you and like had a one-on-one conversation. Just looking at you like...
It's not that far. It's like 5 feet.
Yeah, but it's more than like the width of a table.
You're like a foot further than when we sit on like opposite ends of the couch.
Sure. But we're facing each other.
Fair.
We don't generally sit on the couch facing each other.
Do you want me to like reconfigure?
No, we're good.
The situation so we're sitting side by side?
We're good.
Okay, cool. So this is your first appearance on the podcast.
On any podcast.
On any podcast?
I don't think I've ever been interviewed.
Really?
Outside of like a job.
You're someone worth interviewing.
Thanks.
Sorry, I said that with surprise. Like, you're someone worth interviewing, but it's like, you definitely are. It's a lot like I feel about being shy and antisocial around strangers, where it's like, you just kind of got to like break the seal and then like, it's all kind of fine,
yeah,
you know, or whatever. And it's like, I think your like anxiety about doing something like a podcast or like an interview that would be in print or whatever is that the buildup is so, or as you talk about, the anticipation is so bad that then like once it's like through.
Once it's happening, it's fine. I was literally nervous, like sitting in the kitchen being like,
while
I feel a little nauseous. It's like, for what? I'm going to sit in a room of my own home and talk to my husband.
Yeah, you're not even like, it's not even like I have an offsite studio that you never go to and you're like,
I mean, to be fair, I don't often come in here.
Wow. You used to.
Yeah, I mean, I come in here if you're like, hey, come listen to this thing.
Well, that, which I haven't done in a little while, but also, you know, you used to have a Zoom call in here.
Yeah.
Like you used to do.
Yeah, in-person therapy has helped me not come in here anymore.
Sure. So this is your first appearance on the podcast. I don't know. I mean, we talk about this a lot, that I have a range of scale of what I think are lofty or not lofty expectations of the podcast, which hopefully someday come with like bonus episode or, like Patreon or whatever, someday far into the future. All I care about now is continuing to get good interviews, but it's like, I don't know how many main episodes of the podcast you will continue to feature on.
Yeah, in the future, you'll have to pay to listen to me talk.
Yes, that's what we want. Yeah, you want that Chef Amanda? You got to pay.
Get it while you can, people.
But also, how does it make you feel to be the first person on the podcast after Michael Ruhlman?
Just no pressure at all. As we talk about my anxiety, I'm just like so proud of you that happened.
I'm not going to lie. It still like geeks me out a little bit.
It should. I mean, I feel like both of us have had some opportunities in the last few years where like it's worth sitting back and being like, that really fucking happened. Yeah. And that's pretty
absolutely great. I also think too, it's a testament to, I don't know that there is a right way or a wrong way to approach people to do the kinds of things like this. But, it's, again, in my very like soundbite thing about, because a number of people have asked like how that happened. And like, I am very honest in being like, yeah, I pay for his Substack. I have written intelligent comments on posts and he has written back. So he knew I wasn't some moron, like despite what we were talking about the other day, sending detailed emails for that same purpose to be like, here's more information than you need.
Yeah.
And, pertinent to you, like that I'm already thinking about you as a guest, not just like, if you agree to come on, I'll figure it out. Like I legitimately am interested in you and like, yes,
here's some things.
Yeah. And I think that makes for a slightly easier time.
Yeah.
Particularly in that instance, that was an easy way.
Well, especially in a world where I am certain that someone like him, any like known person, is constantly receiving messages, especially on like social media, of just being like, hey, I'd love to like do this thing in a very like, I want to use you way.
Yeah.
If given the opportunity, if someone said you can speak to Michael Ruhlman for an hour and you can't use it on anything, that's still something you would take.
Yeah, of course it is.
So like
it would be useful to me,
right?
Even if it wasn't useful to
to
the whole. That's the whole point of Matt O'Donnell Wants to Know.
I don't want to know.
Yeah, I don't care where I get where I have to go to get knowledge. I'll do it. I was describing to someone, maybe it was Demi, just the other day, about my thing where I will like insatiably search for something.
Yeah.
A movie or a documentary or whatever, and then I will get a hold of it and then not watch it.
Yeah.
It's about the idea of being like, I conquered this.
We have so many bookshelves to prove this point.
Well, yes, but and hard drives. There are hard drives full of.
Yeah.
Who did I tell yesterday, or it was Dina when I said the thing about maybe you didn't hear me downloading all of Mr. Ed.
Oh yeah.
Because I was like, Mr. Ed isn't streaming anywhere. The show from the 50s. I
have to have it.
Like, what am I going to do?
There may be a time 30 years from now where I think I really want to watch that one.
It's really unfortunate about that, and I am willing to say it's unfortunate, even though it's the second time something like that has happened. It's like, how many more times am I going to watch Mr. Ed before I die?
Oh my God. This is what we need. This is great for your wife with anxiety, to just occasionally have to think like, Matt's really stressed about how many times he's going to get to see some random show before he dies.
Well, luckily the previous one had been like, I don't know how many more times I'm going to be in New York before I die.
Oh my God.
At least that was much loftier of a thing, a place that I like.
Loftier and also just stupid. Unless you're going to die in the next like year, which.
Sure, I agree. But it's just one of those things where it's like, when you like, at the end of the day, let's face it, like we will end up going to where you grew up exponentially more times than we ever will anywhere near, like where I grew up or other places. And so it's just like, speaking of small town Louisiana, okay, this is a good segue.
What do you want to know about me?
I found my first segue. Okay. I was thinking about this just earlier, like while I was setting up. When you are married to someone let alone like when you meet someone and you decide, I'm going to spend an extraordinary amount of time with this person.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you get these like long, drawn out, over detailed stories.
Sure.
It's not like interviewing someone for a documentary where it's like, I need to get all the points that I'm trying to like, that I want to know to make this a fully illustrated vibe. Yeah. You kind of just let that trickle out over time. And so,
which is funny for me to think that you would think that, because I feel like what made you different when we like first started talking was that you did actually have like real questions about me. And
I mean, yes, but also like, but the difference between like that and like perhaps like the kind of thing that I'm about to ask is, I know ultimately why you left school pursuing art, but what I don't know is what actually made you want to like go to culinary school.
For a long time, I didn't want to cook for a living because I loved it. And I was worried that that would mess that love up somehow.
Sure. That is like, or again, I say is, I don't know about now, but when I started at Berkeley, that was such a big part of the dropout rate. People talk about the dropout rate being like out of control. And most people assume it has to do with the fact that like, even when I was there, it was one of the most expensive schools in the country.
Yeah.
But when you are, you know, the guy in a class in high school, that's like the guy that, I'll make it era adjusted, plays a bunch of like Jack Johnson songs on guitar, and like everybody in the class thinks you're cool or hot or whatever. And so you're like, yeah, I'm going to go to school for music. And then you show up and you're like working through some Bach harmony and stuff like in these like basic classes. And it's like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
The instant joy sucking, which, side note, the first day that I had class at Berkeley, the guy, Dan Moretti, his thing was like, you put on some James Brown songs, like, where's the pulse? And I was like, yeah, here we are. We've done it.
This is where I want to be.
I had the opposite reaction to the high dropout rate. That's even like making me like misty thinking about it. Like,
it's my favorite thing about you when you get a little misty.
Well, I just don't think about that kind of thing often, but it's like it in a way that I say the opposite more often.
Yeah.
That like knowing that people think that like that's something they want to do. And then when you're confronted with like learning about it at a very nuts and bolts level, it's like, whoa, that
that wasn't what I wanted.
I never think that often about that moment because it was very much that way of being like, oh, here I am. Yeah, fucking cool. And like that never like stopped. The only thing that was detrimental was doing music was an alternative to the things that I was expected to do as a teenage kid in high school.
Yeah.
A lot. And so finding other hobbies in college was difficult. Like all of a sudden, like my workload became what I was doing as an escape. And that was all well and good. And it didn't take up as much, or it didn't leave as big of a void as like what high school was leaving a void that made me want to be paying attention to music in every
it was like
hour of my day, opposite. But yeah, then figuring out like, well, what am I going to do for recreation to escape the thing that is the bulk that was a difficult like part of college.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you were saying that you didn't want the...
Yeah, so I didn't want it to like ruin that love. But yeah, at some point I like decided I was going to let that fear go.
What did you think you were going to do? What was the like end goal?
I don't know, because at the time I was like working, doing wedding cakes, which I really loved. And I think that was part of the reason why I decided to go to culinary school, was I was like, I want to do something in this world. And when I decided like, okay, this is the goal, something culinary related is what I want to do. I still was like, I want to do that to the best of my ability, which means some form of training, either culinary school or start working in a restaurant, whatever.
Yeah.
But I knew, like from the beginning, I knew that I never wanted to work in a restaurant. That just like was not my thing. Which made me the weird person at school, because everybody was like, everybody's trying to own a restaurant.
That's right. Yeah.
In culinary school.
Yeah. Everybody wants a beard award. Like,
yeah. And for me, I think it was always like, I want to cook. I could see myself doing like pastry. I could have done wedding cakes my whole career and been happy with that.
Yeah.
I really wanted to like take care of people.
Yeah.
And so trying to like figure out what that looked like, and I didn't really know. And so school was also a way to be like, school gives you some like buffer of time of like, I know the direction I want to go. I don't actually know what I want to do, but school is a way to like, continue feeling like I'm doing the right thing without having to know all the answers.
Yeah. Same thing happens, again, past tense, happened at Berkeley, where I think every serious musician went through a phase of thinking they could seriously consider being a jazz musician.
Yeah.
And it was mostly just because at the time, that was what the bulk of the exposure was. Like all the stuff you were learning was like through jazz stuff, because that's where the school had come from in that like very transitional time of the school that I was there. Yeah. Just thinking it's like, playing jazz, like hot jazz sounds like a great idea. And it's like, so yeah, everyone thinks that. And then like,
you need a 4-year education to decide that that's actually not what you want.
Get to the lucky ones get to the halfway point and go,
maybe not.
Nah.
How could I make money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were doing like wedding cakes like before then, which I knew. Obviously, I know that you started like cooking in response to like the alternatives were not good.
Yeah.
And also that you can describe that.
My first memories of cooking are with my grandpa,
Right, which is the other side of it.
Like
that.
Standing on a chair at the kitchen counter making Thanksgiving food with him. But when my parents got divorced and my mom owned a daycare, which you know.
Yeah. She's been on the show.
Yep, everybody knows. We always were eating daycare leftovers for dinner because she was like, I've got 3 kids and I own a business and like I'm not coming home from work and then cooking dinner.
What were those daycare leftovers like? Like on a given day, what would that be like?
Terrible. Just bad. I mean, it's cafeteria food. Like, like they were doing the best they could, but it wasn't delicious.
Yeah. Hey, do you know that I have have we ever talked about this, that I have a PDF of the school cafeteria cookbook is from like the 70s.
I did not know that you
I have a
that.
PDF of that. I found it because someone was talking about how like, every kid has fond memories of like school pizza.
Yeah.
And they're like, how do you make that? And I went looking to see like, what's the recipe? And I found the cookbook and like, it has it in there, dough recipe and all, like for how to make school pizza. But
there wasn't a lot that was like delicious about school lunch. My favorite memory of school lunch is we had these fish sticks that they called strudels, which I'm just like, why? What? Like, there's nothing about this that makes sense. Still don't know. Anyway, daycare food was not great. And my mom was in a very Donna way, was like, well, this is what we're having, or you can cook dinner. I was like, well, I would like to cook dinner.
Yeah.
She would let me like decide what we were going to eat. I would go to the grocery store with her and I would cook dinner every night.
Uh-huh.
Even like once she got remarried and we, that was a bigger family, 5 kids. I would get home from school in the afternoon from the bus and like I would make dinner every single night. Mm-hmm. That was just what I did.
How'd you have a social life?
People were always at our house.
Oh, fair.
Our house was the house that people hung out at. So, I mean.
How long did you continue doing that, like cooking for your family, like all the time?
I don't ever remember a time that I wasn't. I mean, that was just always, anytime I was at my mom's house.
I mean, this is long after you were in culinary school and things, but the first time that I ever came over to your house for a date, you were cooking dinner and I was told that's like Amanda makes plates. So like
everybody like makes fun of me because I don't know when that started, because when we were kids, I definitely don't think I was like making the plate for people, like serving it to them. I don't know when that started, but definitely every night that we eat, I also make, which you do too now.
Yeah, no,
like if you're cooking,
of course I do. Yeah, for sure.
Which I guess is not a thing that most people do.
I don't know. I don't eat with enough other families besides the couple that we do, that they are people that it's make your own plate. That like I have very little experience in that realm, but like But often, I mean, the thing is like I think about like when I cook dinner and I make plates, either I have chosen to make a meal of accomplishment in which putting it on a plate in a certain way is important to that like entire
Yeah.
process, or it's some sort of delicious slop that's just going to be in a pile in something anyway. And so like, well, then I may as well slap it on the plate
Yeah.
as is anyway. Like,
Yeah.
there's not.
I mean, every now and then I'm just like, you can just make your own plate. I don't
Yeah, for sure.
care.
No,
but
I know, of course, but it was just so funny though. It's like that was the thing.
Yeah.
The first time that I ever ate
they
food.
had to warn you.
No, that wasn't the first time that I ever ate food that you made. I think that
When was the first time you?
it was at the house I was living in. The like second time, like we had dinner.
Did you cook for me before I cooked for you?
No, because we went to the store. You were basically like, if we're gonna date, you need to have like
All of these.
Goya seasonings in your
There
cabinet.
was a time that I really loved some Goya spices.
Yeah, and so we went to the Kroger in Hermitage, and like you got
I
those.
stocked your cabinet.
Yeah, you made some sort of like Latin food. There were
Yeah.
like black beans and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't.
And then after that, it was different. But
The podcast listeners can know that you often cook for me far more than I cook for you. Or at least in the beginning you did.
sure.
And now I would say that you eat a lot more food that I cooked, but I'm not necessarily cooking it for you.
us. Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. That is the number one question that comes out of people that find out
Yeah.
that you're a chef. It's like, I bet you eat really well. It's like, sometimes.
Occasionally, yes.
Other times it's a bowl of 6 different cultures and
Yep.
intended for meals
Yep.
slapped together into one bowl with
Yep.
rice or a noodle.
Almost always. That is what it is.
Yeah. I guess in my own way, me cooking a meal is the response to daycare food.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
The level of food.
I would
coming
like
out
to
of-
think
yeah.
that the leftovers are a little bit better.
Having not had the Kids World leftovers,
Uh-huh.
I'm quite sure that they are. However,
I'm being Donna about it and being like, well,
yeah.
you can cook if
or
you want
can cook. It's
something
like, cool, yeah.
else.
Well, and it's also like I say too, I mean, again, soundbite things that I say, but I went from being all my friend who cooked for them
Yeah.
to having you, and you are a better cook than I am.
And like I say every time, I spent a lot of money to be able to
Yeah, right.
cook.
No, of
So
course.
if
Yeah.
you can cook better than me, it's a problem.
All those things. And so it's just sort of like a lot of times I am just trying to like make sure I don't forget how to
I don't think you're in any danger
cook meat
of
well
that
or things like
happening.
that.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Well, I mean, that's such a hard thing about home cooking and being very good at it is that what restaurants get the benefit of in a lot of ways is repetition.
Yeah.
And, you know, and even all the way up to Michelin star style cooking is like the expectation is that you are able to deliver the same dish
Yeah.
repeatably.
Yeah, this has been perfected by the time.
Yeah, perfected and wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, even thinking about that time that we ate at Bouchon and that the salmon tartare that we
So
watched those
fucking
people not
sad.
eat was a special. It's not on the menu,
Yeah.
but like that dish is perfect. It's just we're making it tonight because we didn't make it the last 3 nights
Yeah.
or whatever. You know, that wasn't just like a bistro like, oh, we've got
Right.
this laying around, we can
We're
do
just
this,
gonna
this,
wing
and
it.
this. Now, that is to say as well that like in great restaurants when the level of thought is that way, you know, that was what in his Substack Michael Ruhlman said about The Bear, is about like how he disliked watching Carmy like obsess over a dish, plate it a bunch of times and just throw it away.
Yeah.
Whereas like he described very much a scene like at the French Laundry of Thomas Keller asking, actually it was Grant Acatz from Millennia at the time, like saying like, we need a new scallop dish. And Keller being like, what else do we have around? And, you know, Grant said, we have some asparagus coulis and like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Do some truffle with that and, you know, like wrap it in a chive. And like, that's how you get that dish that we had,
Yeah.
that asparagus and scallop dish. That's actually the one he's talking about. Again, it comes down to consistency. Like when you're consistently thinking like that, it's much easier to get a dish closer.
Yeah.
That quickly. But anyway, the point I was trying to make is that like when you're on like a meat station in a restaurant, you know,
That
it
is your
becomes such a
responsibility.
second nature to what doneness
Yeah.
is like. You know, sometimes not cooking as I used to makes those things tougher, where I have to like really think about like how long has it been, and like it's just the like nature part of it is tough, and I like to keep that going.
I think you do a good job.
I do all right. There are times that I don't know.
I think we are on average eating better than most people are eating at home.
Yeah, that's true.
Other than, of course, my clients.
Sure. You just said so. What did you just say that about? Like, chicken and the chicken and gravy and mashed potatoes.
Yep.
You're like, this is great. And some people
would be like, this is the best dinner I've cooked all year. And I was like, I just need to throw some shit together quickly.
Yeah.
Because we have not eaten.
Besides the recency bias of Michael Ruhlman, but also like the amount of his work that I've read and has been impressionable, like on my home cooking in my life, hearing him talk about things like, you know, when people would ask him on podcasts, like, what are the things that the home cook? And he'd be like, I don't know, seasoning.
Right.
Like, or in your seasoning. And it's like, that's
just like a couple of sauces would be nice.
Yeah.
And like seasoned food.
Yeah.
That would make everything better.
Yeah, I think that's something that I was doing badly on an average night for a long time, where you'd be like, you know, this could like use a sauce or something. And now the amount of times when I'm like thinking about a dinner that we can have, I'm like, what sauce is going to go on this?
That's the wisdom I've passed on to you.
Just
that a dish needs a sauce.
Yeah. And like often I would, but it's funny when we were on the cruise, the amount of like different sauces that were on things does make me feel like I'm going to go through like a winter of sauce making.
You should.
Of like a lot of
I mean, that's like the beginning of culinary school is sauces.
For sure.
Like you got to know how to
as
do
well
that.
It should be.
Mm-hmm.
So back to that. So you were thinking that there weren't going to like figuring out what your options would be after culinary school. Is there a similar experience that you had in that to the kind of thing that like I was talking about like, maybe not similar, but sort of in that same vein as the thing I was saying about like getting to like my very first class at Berkeley and being like, oh shit, yeah. Did you have something like that? And or was there something that like surprised you like early on in terms of like things you were being asked to do and like it changing the way you looked at the cooking or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I definitely had the moments of like, I love this.
Yeah.
Because of the way that
despite being a woman in a culinary school, like especially at the time, still more male dominated and like chauvinistic than.
Oh yeah, for
like,
sure that.
Yeah.
So I had to work because, you know, I went to culinary school in Boston. It took me like 2 or 3 jobs to be able to afford to be there.
Yeah.
And so I loved school enough that I was my school, like I took the shift of classes in the morning. So I would get to school at like 5:30. Class started at 6 a.m.
So it's exactly like your life now.
Yeah.
Culinary school
really prepared me for that.
You for
and I would go to work immediately after and then go to a second job. And there were times where I would like take a nap in my car in the parking lot before going back to school because I literally didn't have time to go home.
Yeah.
Or I would like go home and sleep on the couch because I knew I wouldn't get comfortable enough that getting up would be difficult.
Something that you also still do.
I still do on occasion, which is
ridiculous. Especially because like I can see that idea of like not wanting to get too comfortable in bed when it's all up to you. But often when you take naps like that, I'm in the house and it's like, I will come get you up.
Yeah, but you always are sad about me having to get up. And so you also don't want me to have to get up. And like if you're home and doing something, then it's like, I don't know, just easier. So culinary school, I definitely had those moments of like, I love this. I'm so happy to be doing this.
Yeah. Can you think of any?
I mean, all of it, just like morning lineups of like,
but you like, it's funny that you like morning lineups and then are like, but not in a restaurant.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't want to live that way, but like school was just immersive, being like fully in it.
Yeah. I always say that Berkeley was like a microcosm of what the music industry is like. Yet a lot of the people that were on the top in that microcosm didn't go on to do anything.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I imagine Berkeley, like from the way that you have talked about it, Berkeley is a lot, or culinary school is a lot like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's trade school, you know,
right.
like
It's different than a normal university where like, yeah, some of your classes, you have people who are majoring in the same thing as you and whatever, but like in this space, we all love this thing that we're doing. And so there's like an excitement level around the subject that doesn't exist in like a normal school environment.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's exciting.
Although I used to sneak into Boston University, like
of course
gigantic have we ever talked about this?
No, but is it surprising?
I used to go to Boston University and sneak into like Chemistry 101, like 450 person lecture halls, and just like hang out because I was also missing out on that experience.
Yeah. Our versions of hanging out for fun are a little different.
I mean, the fact that sometime like 2 years after I got out of college is when I first started looking for like, surely there are like college level lectures that you can like download of things.
Oh, yeah. Well, which is still.
Well, yeah, but that's what I mean. Is like
an insight into our lives for the listeners. Matt likes to be awake at around 3 a.m. Maybe not. He's a little high. And he's just watching lectures.
Yeah.
On like, ancient civilizations.
Yeah.
Yeah, not my idea of fun. He also really likes to try and relay this information.
Whoa. Again, this podcast is about you.
Sure.
I am not the subject.
It's about me.
I suppose it is your
my
life.
Inability to try and like receive this information as I am getting into bed to go to sleep.
Whatever. Just because my prime time is like 9 p.m. is when like I really start to like get
9 to 10
gear.
p.m. is when Matt is fully awake for the first time.
Yeah.
And ready to have discussion.
Yeah. I was thinking the other day about how when there are things that I do need to be up early for, where it's like, I got to get up at 6, like to be somewhere at, not get up at 6, but like get up at 7 because I need to be somewhere about like 8:30 or whatever. Sometimes I am like, oh, look at this. I've got so much of the day, blah, blah, but I still...
I'm going to stay up till 4 a.m.?
No, I still don't activate really until like that same time. Like that doesn't change.
Yeah.
And it's been that way
I'm aware.
My entire life. Like I can clearly...
I mean, your mom is that way.
Yeah,
so,
for sure. I can clearly recall being in my bedroom, and I don't know how I had so little of the parents coming in your room and being like, you need to go to sleep.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. But our house was built to be a summer home, so it wasn't like super well insulated. So playing tapes on my Fisher-Price tape machine in kindergarten, like late at night, my parents would have heard that. If they
knew that you were awake.
I was in kindergarten remembering the sun coming up because I had stayed up like
this is not surprising to me at all.
Yeah. No, this isn't new. This isn't some like I went to college and I learned what it was like to have no...
You are who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've always been.
Baby, I was born this way.
Culinary school.
Cool. Thanks for keeping us on track. You are the host now.
I'm going to try to answer at least one full question in this episode. Moments that were like some favorites. Really, there's a lot of memories around making, because I was going to class at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
The amount of times I was making like duck confit and beef bourguignon at like 6 a.m. Yeah. And like our poor, in like sauce making classes, our poor chef instructors having to try like, 30 people's hollandaise. Like,
oh, God.
They would spit it out.
Still, just that, I mean,
it's a lot.
Even when you're a professional like that, that is palate exhaustion.
Yeah, no, terrible.
Like whether you're spitting it out or not. Like,
I think one of the like interesting things when I was in school was that I was like the odd man out because I did know that I didn't want to work in a restaurant and didn't want to own a restaurant. That was just an interesting place to be because everybody there wanted to do that.
Right. So that's a question too, is like, so, you said the beauty of school like that, an immersive school, is like you get time to like figure it out and you have options, but you were closing off a great number of those options
Yeah.
from the beginning.
I guess I was like open enough to the possibility that that may change.
Yeah.
But it never did. Like there wasn't really ever a point where I was like, I would really love to go.
Yeah,
Like,
that's why
do this
when
thing.
you were asked to go to San Francisco and
Yeah, and
run a
like-
kitchen, like that was just not going to be,
I turned that down.
a thing.
Um,
Because that experience would have been like restaurant
Yeah.
production,
Yeah.
not like working at Kombu where it was
Right.
not, even though you were
Yeah.
putting food out, it's not a
yeah.
restaurant.
I mean, so in culinary school, I met a woman named Kristen who was also in culinary school at the same time as me, but she already had a business. It was a vegan company who did like meal prep. I'm really grateful that I met her during that time and was able to work there, partially because just being in a French culinary school, like Le Cordon Bleu is
Yeah.
full French food, lots of butter, lots of
very
cream.
much the same as going to a jazz school.
Yeah,
and
like,
being
we're-
now I own all the Miles Davis records.
Yeah, we're doing this thing. Simultaneously working in a vegan kitchen was it was my first experience with like dietary restrictions and people having very like specific things that they did or did not eat.
Side note about that, you are so good at that thing, but based on the time that you would have been doing that, that's like sort of the infancy, I think, of like the
that was the
culture
first time like I
doing
ever heard of
that.
people talking about like gluten-free anything.
Yeah.
We didn't use any like processed sugar there.
Yeah.
So like all of that kind of stuff was new.
Yeah. That's way ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
I mean,
Learning like how to make vegan versions of things. Also, like Kristen was at the time a vegan. I was the only person in that kitchen who was not a vegan. And so I think I brought like a strength of if I can make food that I want to eat without having any of these like restrictions for myself, then I think we've hit like something that tastes really good.
Yeah.
But also just learning like very opposite ends of the spectrum at the same time, like working in both of those or going to school and working there. And that was the first time that I could see like some version of maybe what I would want to do eventually. Being like closer to the people that you're cooking for, knowing them personally. I think that was always something that I didn't love. Like the things that I don't like about the idea of working in a restaurant are like that lifestyle, which kind of makes me laugh sometimes because it's not like my life is somehow less stressful than restaurant work. But that and just not being connected to the people that you are cooking for. Like I really love that I know people.
Yeah. I mean, and your clients love that they know you.
Yeah. Robbie and I were just talking last night about like, he was just asking me about business and like growth and what that looks like. And I was like, when I think about growing, the thing that I'm always thinking about is how I can teach someone how to cook things that I cook, but continuing to make sure that my clients have access to me and feel like they are being taken care of by a person and not just like ordering some food from some company. That is like the most important thing to me.
Mm-hmm.
That just makes growth a bit, like we'll see how that happens.
I think there is definitely room for growth that way. And I mean, but that's also why I think that we, though, we like income, have always felt like there's a cap to that, at least to like the number of people, whether that means that you can, that you hit that cap and are also doing some other project that doesn't require like more.
Yeah. There
people.
may be a cap to like the number of people I'm serving weekly, but other business things.
Yeah. But other
separate.
things or ways to be out there that, that can be.
Yeah. And I mean, they're like, in reading, like when I read Unreasonable Hospitality, that's
a Will Guidara book.
Yeah, anyone should read.
Yeah.
Like, side note, I felt so completely like connected to that to the point of like tears multiple times.
Sure.
Just because it was like, oh, this person like sees the world the way that I see it.
Yeah.
And that feels nice to know that like other people are out there looking at things this way.
It is also nice that like in reading it, because in Unreasonable Hospitality, he describes the like wild shit they would do at 11 Madison Park personally for guests. And the only thing I got out of eating at 11 Madison Park was getting served left-handed.
Yeah.
Which is which is great. I mean, no,
before ever coming up in a book, you had told me about multiple times. Like that has come up in every like fine dining experience that we've ever had together. Is like how much that made you feel like seen.
Sure, yeah.
To be like, oh yeah, this guy's eating with his left hand. Like we should reset the table.
No, they didn't reset the table. They reset the dishes.
Oh yeah.
The food was plated.
Yep, completely.
Opposite.
Yep,
mirrored. And I don't even know if that makes me feel, I mean, it should make me feel seen.
Well, that's me speaking in a very like emotional heart way, where you're a very like brain heavy, you're like, this makes sense, and that they've noticed.
Well, it wasn't
and
even
so,
that it
like,
made sense. Like, I did think it was very nice, but it wasn't like, I've been yearning for left-handed.
Yes.
I mean, I do that at now and then all the time now.
Will like reset.
I reset the setting to be left-handed.
Yeah.
Just because it makes sense.
Talking about Unreasonable Hospitality, I think the biggest like benefit to me reading that was it has allowed me to like dream about growth being possible in a way that doesn't take away from that feeling, and it being more about like me needing to create a culture within whoever is working with me.
Yep. That
those people are also able to give our clients that feeling of like being taken care of.
Yeah, God.
So whether it's me specifically or not, that experience is the same for the client.
So I said the thing about how like you didn't want to work in a restaurant, so you were like automatically kind of like limiting your options, and the one time that you had like an offer for that, you were out there. So you know, the one time that you had a restaurant like thing, like, you know, that you knew that wasn't something you were going to do, and then you were at Kombu with Kristen, you know, and that stuff. And so I know that personal circumstances brought you to Nashville out of like Boston. So other than like figuring out what you were going to do just for yourself for like life.
Yeah.
Did you have any like ambitions at that time of like food, something like had when you like landed here? Yeah.
Like I think ambition number one, like you said, was all personal. Just like I wasn't in a great place, was ready to move.
Yeah.
Like it was just time to like figure out how to be a healthier person.
Yeah.
But JD, so Robbie and JD, friends.
Yeah.
Why I moved here was like I came here just thinking like they were basically like, our couch is yours, or we have a spare bedroom, you can stay here.
You were gonna halfway house it.
I was like just come stay here for a little while and like figure out what's next. I thought I'd maybe go to California, whatever. But at the time, JD was doing like event stuff, and Robbie, being the very like social person he was, like they were always hosting like parties and stuff. And so like her and I had talked about doing like a dinner series. And before I even moved here, I had come a couple of times and we had done like dinner parties and people. I didn't know that. Yeah, we did one at their house, and then they had connected me with, at the time, there was this thing called Cause a Scene where they would like do shows, and the Lone Bellow was like playing a show, and they had me come in and like cook dinner for the band before the show. And that was like a very like fun Nashville thing for like, you know, having not lived here before, that felt like, ooh, this is exciting. But when I got here, I didn't really know if I'd stay. And so it was really just like, I just need to find a job to pay for whatever until I decide what I'm going to do. And so I got a job doing cakes again, but I never like stopped. I wasn't always cooking to make money, but I was always cooking for people. And
Yeah.
like while I lived with JD and Robbie, the joke was for a while I didn't have a job for like the first month or something.
Yeah.
And they, of course, were letting me stay there for free, which was very kind. And so I was like, well, I'll cook for you.
Yeah.
And to this day, Robbie's always like, how did we not like just be like, you could do this forever. Like just continue to live with us for free and make food for us.
Yeah. Imagine if by the time I never saw their first house here, I saw
small.
I saw their second. And then like when they got an actual like decent sized home, let's call it that, like, I know that's a lot of years, but if you had held out till then, you could have easily had like a room up off in the corner.
At some point, Robbie would have been like, you can just have this house in the back.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious because when we were like 13, like 8th grade is when JD and Robbie like met and started dating or whatever you would call it at that age. I remember because I was always like the third wheel friend.
Yeah.
And Robbie at one point made this drawing of like him and JD's house someday.
Yeah.
And drew like a dog house in the back as a joke with my name on it.
Great.
So like, yeah, if I would have held out, I would have just had like a little house in the back of their property.
Just really something to aspire to.
Yeah, that's it.
So, but like you didn't really have any like culinary like aspirations at that, which makes sense that you were, you had come out of a situation where you were just trying
being
to
a very like 24-year-old, like what am I doing with my life?
And like, figure out like what, situations were not super great that you needed to like readjust to reality.
Yeah.
And like the outside world with.
Yeah.
So then like, fast forward to like, you did work like remote work with Kristen again.
Yep.
But like that wasn't, I don't know that you could have done that job, which was a lot of like recipe development and stuff without having been in culinary school. Like, that would have never.
And I mean, leading up like all through. So, I stayed in Nashville, kept working in cakes for a while. And then through all of that, I would do like random dinner parties that I would like host, or people would have me cook for different things. So it was never like a muscle that I wasn't using. I just wasn't necessarily making like my income
or
on it.
Aiming toward something like a development of that. Yeah.
I think the first time that I was like certain that that was what I wanted to do was after the bakery that I was working at closed.
Yeah.
I started working for a family, like, and I was there every day.
Yeah.
And just sort of like helped hold their life together. And I like cooked for them and just helped with like everything. And that was the first time that I was like, I really like this feeling of being able to take care of people. And
well, it's really the first time you were taking care of others.
Right.
Like as opposed to like people that you were just close to.
Right. Because that's definitely my like nature to want to like take care of everybody.
And obviously you knew that like that's how you ended up working for them, was like that you were connected to them, but not at the level like.
Yes. We weren't like
super intimately. Yeah.
Yeah. I really enjoyed that thing of just like being connected to somebody. And I've always liked being the like behind the scenes person that helps people.
Yeah.
I mean, I did it with like production stuff too, of just like helping this thing happen.
Yeah, of course.
I had gotten the job in California or like remotely, did that. And then the recipe development and stuff was like, at the time there were like random people that I was cooking for, just sort of like loosely.
Very loosely.
Yeah.
I mean,
just like one-off things. Yeah. And then it was making me think like, this is the direction that I want to go.
Yeah. Regardless, and I don't think that this is like any sort of slight or anyone would not like own up to this, but like you took that job predicated on the idea that they envisioned it as a certain time commitment and you would be open and free
to do
other things.
Yeah.
And like
it was never supposed to be like the full time
and more. Yeah. And then like just the state of that situation definitely required like triple the attention that like you went into it like thinking.
Yeah.
And so I guess in a way, like having kind of forgotten about that you thought that there was like a path forward at that time. And then it was just sort of like in the time that you were there until COVID blew
that
everything for everybody up. It never sort of like got to like take its foot off the gas.
Yeah. Yeah. And COVID, it blew everything up and also is the reason that what I now do exists.
As probably one of the only handful of people that have listened to every episode of this show. No, I talk all the time about how like COVID changed like everything about my mindset.
Yeah.
About all the things that I do. And it is because of the notion of being like everything coming to a dead stop.
Yeah.
And like reassessing, because the areas in which I wasn't getting to be fulfilled were because I was just like pounding and like, you know, when you're a musician, like, you know, all you ever learn is like never say no.
Yeah.
Like don't let go of things because you don't know, blah, blah, blah.
Which I think I was doing a very similar thing.
Sure, absolutely.
Of just like, I am someone that like to a fault prides myself on like my ability to work.
Yeah.
And work hard. And so I always had multiple jobs, always was doing multiple things. And so there wasn't a lot of room for like dreaming about what the right thing was. And COVID made it to where there wasn't really anything left to lose. I didn't have a job anymore.
Well, I mean, yes, there is that. It can never be stated, especially while we're in an election year, to think about the idea that like neither of us would have been eligible for unemployment had we lost our jobs in any other situation.
Right.
So like not only were we being like mandated to stop doing the things that we were doing that were taking up extraordinary amounts of time,
but there was like a weird safety net as well.
We were getting like helped a little bit, you know, and like I know there are so many, I don't know, I used to say that there are so many stories of people who just totally got their lives destroyed by COVID, but like we wouldn't have really anything that we have had it not been for that situation making us reassess, you know, things.
Yeah, I mean, I think like in some ways it is similar to like the miscarriage, and that like it took something big and difficult to like refocus, because it just like everything else just sort of like fell away. And it's like, okay, what am I going to focus all this attention?
Yeah. And in the same way too, like neither of us are doing anything different. Like we're in the same career for both of us, just not in a way that is
grind for no reason.
Or just... I was going to say unfulfilling, but that's not true. Like I never playing music 7 days a week in that way where like I'll go on the road for a weekend and then I'm going to come home and play all the other days that I'm not on the road. Like that was fulfilling in its own way, but like there's not an ability to recognize and be affected by the fulfillment. You know, and so when you can change that, like I am so much more like aware and grateful of the things that like we each have like now in a way that I could never have been in like 2019 or, you know, for myself in 2016, 2017, you know?
Yeah. So COVID, took all of those things away. But then I started getting calls from people being like, are you going to the grocery store? Like, would you cook me food? I have all of these like allergies and whatever. And like people who were just afraid to be out. And so I started cooking for a couple of people out of that. And then like literally and then we went on a walk and decided that you were going to do it for real. We did go on a walk and you were like, you can do this.
Yeah, you should just do this.
Yeah. Which is why I always am quick to remind you that it wouldn't exist without you, because I needed somebody, because of all of my anxiety and fear about things. I needed somebody to tell me like, you're capable of doing this. You can do it.
Luckily, in the things that you were already doing were like proof of concept that like you were not only were you mechanically cooking for people who needed stuff, but they were people with needs in that way. Like so much of the early stuff you were doing was based around people and their food needs that were very special to them. And there isn't quite nearly as much of that
Yeah, that used to be like almost everybody, and now
Yeah, and it was
it's
like
a lot less. Yeah.
Which isn't good or bad.
Yeah, no,
like
I enjoy both ends of that. Like I would, in a perfect world, I like having both. Like it's always nice to be able to just cook for somebody without any like restrictions. But
yeah, but those people got to be so thankful because they were unable to like do those things.
Right.
And so like all the things that are like foundation points of what you do with business are the things that like there were seeds of those things. So it was easy to point to those and be like, boop, boop, boop. These are the things that like, make up basically what your mission statement is now. And it's like, they're already there. Like you can just.
No, those people definitely, like my biggest joy in work related things is when like a client gets food and it's not just like, oh, this tastes so good and we like love it. It's like, this makes my life, like I'm able to like breathe in a way that I couldn't. And you have like made my life so much easier. And I'm able to like, whether it's like spending time with their kids or like just having time for themselves that they wouldn't have otherwise, or that they haven't been eating well because they've got all these restrictions and they're so stressed out about like how to even make that work. And they're like, this is the first time I've enjoyed food in like months. I want that every day of my life. Like that's so fulfilling. And that's so much more than just like, yeah, we can pay our mortgage with what I'm able to make on this thing. Like this is like a sustaining, in it being very important to me that my clients are having conversations with me every week. Like I am writing menus specifically for them. I am talking to them. They are able to say like, my kids are really craving whatever it is. Like, could you do that thing?
I mean, let's not forget the time that you made, like that you were making cashew mac and cheese and protein popsicles for a client so
just
that
try
like
and get some extra protein into their kids'
diet.
Yeah.
It's time to start wrapping up here.
Have we actually talked about anything interesting?
Your entire culinary history is in this interview.
Yeah, but I said interesting.
Yeah. Hey, just think, like you have gotten all that accomplished and it'll be in the archive. So future instances, we can just talk a bunch of shit.
Mm-hmm. That would be more fun, more interesting to just talk shit.
I don't know. You've done pretty well. Like,
look at me go.
Yeah. See, in terms of saying that, like you've never really been interviewed before. I mean, we do this a lot, but like not as well directed. So I don't think that you spend a lot of time like putting forth answers the way you would.
Yeah.
You are interesting enough to have just appeared in Nashville Lifestyles 25 Most Beautiful People issue.
Fucking weird.
We don't need to talk a ton about that because, I mean, you could describe the psychological
I don't think
odyssey of being asked to be in something like that and wanting to be, as you described, the behind the scenes person that makes things work.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that you are the face of your business.
Yes.
So you can't be. You are the front and back.
It is
of scene.
Yeah.
Things, but what I really wanted to ask, since we talked so much about like culinary school and you starting to cook from a family place and all those like kinds of things. I know that the answer to this is going to be silly, but if someone went back in time and told you in culinary school or when you were like making cakes in Louisiana before you ever went, that you would be doing in a magazine, let's not like take the most beautiful people part of it, that you would be listed in Nashville Lifestyles for the business that you have made for cooking for people. Yeah. How would you feel about that? How would young you feel about that?
This is an exercise that I like force myself to do often, honestly. Like when I'm feeling like stressed out about just like day-to-day stuff, I regularly think like, if I could go back and tell myself what my life looks like now. Yeah. I truly like, I feel like it's so like, cliche to be like, I just wouldn't even believe it. But it's like, I really wouldn't. Like, it's pretty incredible. Like, the magazine thing is great. And I feel
well, that is like a marker. Like, that's a very public marker. Whereas, like, I also know all of the, like, discussions you have with like great clients,
Yeah.
and that their affirmations are
Yeah, no, that's the biggest.
not better or worse because like than
No.
anything like that. But this is a very like
I think like being able to tell myself like one, there's going to be like all these opportunities that are just insane to me. Like the people that I've been able to cook for,
Sure.
We won't name names, but
sure, yeah.
there are so many experiences like that where I'm just like, how the fuck did that even happen? Like that's incredible. And I would think like that person is so cool, which is so silly that like I get to be that person that I would have thought is so like cool. It's just funny. But on top of that, like truly to be able to have a job where I feel like deeply fulfilled is such a gift. And like, I don't know that that's a thing. Like, obviously we all want that, but as like a young person, are you like really actively dreaming about how to make sure that your life is like
no, because
fulfilling?
My response to that if I would think about that, because I think the opposite way, which I'll say in a minute.
Surprise.
Well, no, but it's that in two different ways. One, I would like to think that if I told, at the end of the day, like being in music and stuff like that is fulfillment of a thing that was like always certain to me.
Yeah.
Like, or at least like my feeling about that was always certain. So if I went back in time or sent somebody back in time to tell me playing shitty solo looped bass in a coffee shop corner that like what I'd be doing, I'd be like, oh, thank God it works out.
Yeah.
Like
this isn't all for nothing.
All right, cool. Like, which is very different from like not believing it.
Yeah.
But also what I was going to say about that is that I don't know that, I am giving probably 16-year-old me too much credit for being mature in that, like I'd probably be like, I don't know how I feel about that because like I said, the amount of certainty, like I think that I would honestly believe like, oh, thank God, like it's going to work out the way it's supposed to work out.
Yeah.
I will say that I just thought of this now for the very first time, and I'm surprised I've never thought of it this way before. In that Donald Miller book, Hero on a Mission, like the whole thing is built around like writing your obituary and being very in touch with it and like trying to live up to what you want that to say. Yeah. And I certainly don't do that. But I have said to you a number of times, like I think about things sometimes in this is a very only child active imagination way, like as though what would I say about this in the future in like a documentary? Yeah. Like how would I want a thing to be perceived after the fact? Yeah. And try and like live up to that. And so they're similar. I'm surprised that in the times that I have heard
talked about that book or listened,
that book has like come up in hearing those things from Don, like that I've never been like, oh yeah, I kind of like do that like with a very different device and also not like focused and serious. Story of my life. So it's sort of like the opposite of thinking that way. Yeah. But I will say that like I think that as you have grown into this like business and like ultimate like building of like a real like substantial career that's not just kind of, talking about like just doing dinner parties with no like aim at a time into being like, this is what I want to do. And like, I want it to like grow and like, how do we take like steps and things like that? I think that you are sort of like very much doing the closer to what I do, whether you think about it or not. Like you know how you want something to be perceived so that like, if it were to like all end and people were in the way that, you've never wanted to work in a restaurant, but in the way that people talk about restaurants after they close. Yeah. Like when I reminisce about great restaurants I've been to that close, and it's like, oh, these experiences and they did blah, blah, blah so well. And it's like, if your business went away in the morning, everybody that like you provided for would reminisce about the things. And I think that the things they would reminisce about are the things that you think are important.
Yeah. I think what my therapist and I talked about after the Beautiful People thing came out, like when I posted about that, and I felt very like self-conscious and whatever about that. But when I put it up, there were all of these people who like commented on it, and it wasn't like, oh, you're beautiful. Like, yes, of course, there was some of that. But the amount of people who posted all of these things about like specific things that I had done that made them feel like really taken care of and like, you know, just, you don't like the word seen, but like doing that and making sure
that is the right application of that though. Like you were being seen.
And honestly, like that was so important I feel like maybe that was like one of the most accomplished, times I have felt like, how do you say that? I don't know. I felt most accomplished in reading all of that and realizing like I've done it in some way.
Yeah,
like
you got to see sort of like a body of work happen all at once through different phases.
Right.
And which, you know, for all the things that are fucking terrible about social media.
Yeah, that was a nice
That
one.
was a time that, you know, across a few different platforms, you were able to connect all these
something really meaningful happened in
the
the Instagram comment section.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. No, my therapist and I had a very long conversation about like being able to take all of that in and like really allow myself to like feel the weight of that in a positive way, that like I've actually been able to like do the thing I wanted to do. And that felt really nice.
Yeah. Well, there you are. You've
there
done
we
it.
are.
Cool. Well, thank you for your service of the first time
you are
appear on
welcome.
the podcast.
Yeah, next time, guys, you got to pay for it.
I don't know if that'll ever be true, but it is certainly not the last time. All right.
I love you.
I love you too. Bye.
Bye.
As we walk out the door into the rest of our home
As we
and
just
continue
go,
talking in our lives. Okay, cool.
Bye, guys.
Bye. There you have it. That's a whole hour of me grilling my wife with questions. Thanks to her for being my guest today, and thanks to you for hanging out and listening to this episode of Matt O'Donnell Wants to Know. We are on the march to kicking ass and having more asses to kick. I don't know. I'm not kicking all your asses. Just ignore me. Do what she does. Do what Amanda does, and just ignore me when I kind of run some weird lasso loop that doesn't really close. Sometimes I throw it out there. Yeah, like at a rodeo. Okay, I'm getting it back. Just throw it out there like I'm at a rodeo, and sometimes you throw that lasso and it doesn't get around the calf's neck, and you're like, oh, well, okay. I guess I didn't rope that one. Anyway, what I was trying to say was, thank you so much for all that you do as listeners to help support the show and help the show grow. We are always looking for more people to get my voice and the voices of my guests into their ear holes. That does mean like, follow, subscribe, share, rate, comment, do whatever you can to help this thing that I'm doing be out there. You can find the show on Instagram at Matt O'Donnell Wants to Know. You can find me on Instagram at Matt O'Donnell. Send things that you want to know or tell me or whatever to mattodonnellwantstoKnow@gmail.com. Don't forget, there are stickers that are currently free. If you want to sport them on your laptop or water bottle or whatever, I am happy to just go ahead and send you one if you send me your address. It's that simple. mattodonnellwantstoKnow@gmail.com. That's going to do it for this time. Short, sweet, lovable. Take care of yourself. And remember, the best answer to a question is usually another question. See ya.